Today's topic is the top 5 reasons for starting as early as possible in raising bilingual or multilingual children. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Ask Tetsu. If I can raise multilingual children, you can too. So, people often ask me, when is a good time to introduce a second language or third language to your children? My answer is always as early as possible. How early? Well, I talked to my wife's tummy before my first son was even born in the target language, which was Mandarin. So I take it to the extremes, but anytime, today, I think is the best time to start. If you already are thinking about it, if you already have children, of course. So today I would like to give you 5 reasons that I summarized into 5 reasons why I think you should really go as early as possible. So reason number 1, peak brain development period. So in a human being's life, the first few years are the most critical when it comes to brain development. During the first 6 years, I would say, where your brain develops up to its 90%, up to about 90% of its adult size. I actually saw this video on the CNN YouTube channel, and it really summarized it very well. So I'm going to link the video here in the descriptions, but let me show you a very quick summary of this video. So at birth, the baby's brain weighs in about 25% of that of its adult counterpart, and it immediately enters one of the fastest brain growth periods in its life, and the brain will grow up to about 90% of its adult brain size by age 6. And this is a period where 700 synapses, and depending on the source that you can find, some even mention up to 1,000 synapses are formed in the brain per second. I repeat, per second. That is absolutely amazing. And that creates a very, very complex neural network in the brain. And around about age 3, the brain starts this reverse process called pruning, whereby a lot of its neural networks, the synapses that are not used frequently, will start to be deleted. I often compare brain development to building a house, and language learning to putting in tubings or the plumbing of that house. So the best time to do so, obviously, is when you're building a house. And if you want that extra bathroom, the extra set of plumbings, if you know that you're gonna want that right away, then you might as well do it. And of course, you can do renovations later in life where you tear down the walls and add to the plumbing, just like many people learn a new language after they become adults. It is a more labor intensive and it is more costly. And the finishing is often not quite as good as if you had put them in the first place. So if you already know you want your child to learn that second language or third language later in life, then I highly recommend you do so as early as possible when they're a child. So reason number 2 is to learn multiple languages like a native speaker. Now, there's a hypothesis that was put forth by Dr. Eric Lenenberg in 1967 called the critical period hypothesis. And I learned about this by watching a fantastic video by Dr. Patricia Kuhl on TED Talk called The Linguistic Genius of Babies. And in that talk, she mentioned this critical period hypothesis, which basically says that an observation of the general public, we see that the ability to learn a language, a second or third language, to a very high level, or native-like, can only be achieved by age 3 to 7. Now, what the mechanisms are behind that, I do not know, but it is an observation that people systematically lose the ability to learn languages at a very high level, starting from about 7 years or so. And by the time you're in your late teens and into your 30s, well, you've pretty much lost that ability to learn it to a very high level. Now, I know I have many polyglot friends who would say that adults can learn languages very well. And I'm not here to counter that. In fact, I do believe that adults can learn it very well. But there's a premise to that, and that is you need motivation and you need dedication and hard work. Now, I don't know if my children will have that later in life, whether they will have any interest in languages. But I do know that I want them to learn different languages because it will be helpful and useful in their life or their career or whatever. So I am not going to wager on them being very motivated, so I'm just going to do it now. Later in life, if they are motivated, they can learn more languages. And in that same TED Talk by Dr. Kuhl, she mentioned that babies, which are basically omnipotent or almighty in terms of language learning, take statistics of the languages that they are learning, which means babies can learn any language because they can hear all the sounds of any language that they're exposed to. And she gave the example of an English family with an English mother speaking to her baby, or a Japanese family with a Japanese mother speaking to her baby. And that once the baby starts to accumulate all the sounds in that specific language, then they become very keen or very tuned into the different sounds in that language, whereas they start to lose the ability to hear the sounds that are not produced in that language. So the example shown here is if you have an English-speaking mother and in the English language you have a very clear distinction between the sound of R and L, then the babies are very sensitive to those sounds, whereas in a Japanese family and in the Japanese language, the distinction between R and L is not clear. In fact, it's sort of a hybrid sound between the two. Then the babies hear that intermediate sound much better than the distinctive two sounds of R and L. So the bottom line is introducing a new language while they still have the capacity to hear all the intricacies of different languages is the best way to allow them to learn it well, learn it like a native, speak it fluidly, and also have good accent. And boy, kids are very proud of having good accent. Have you ever had a kid correct your accent when you're learning a second language? Let me show you this little clip, a little compilation of shots that I took of my first son, Ronnie, where he's correcting other people or where he's insisting on good accents and ways to say certain words.
4、
5、
6、
6、
7、
7、
8、
8、
9、
10。
10。
Okay?
Little teacher.
Okay.
这个嘞，啊，这个也是不一样啊。
P-E-R-T-Y Percy
Oh, very good! 哇，哦
Percy
，Percy， 我以为你会说 Percy， Percy， Percy，
不是 Percy 是 Percy
very good, Percy 呢？
不是 Percy
不是吧 ？Percy。
Launcher.
那怎么讲
Launcher.
Long
Launcher.
讲
Shark.
讲
Shark.
讲
Shark.
讲不是
On.
deux
Deux.
trois
Trois.
quatre
Quatre.
cinq
Quatre. Está bien? Quatre.
six
Quatre.
cinq
Cinq.
six
Six.
sept
Sept. Oh, gracias, Ronnie.
Reason number 3, beliefs and psychological barriers. So I was reading an article on the Optilingo website the other day. Shout out to my good friend Janti Yamisha, by the way, owner of Optilingo, which is actually an app for language learning. So I was reading this article called "The 6 Excuses That Deter Your Language Learning." Now, just very quickly, the first one is I'm X years old. That's too old to learn a new language. Second one is I have too much trouble learning a language. I am way too busy. I don't like failure. I'm not comfortable speaking the language. And finally, I will learn someday, just not here, not now. Have you heard these different excuses before? So I would just like to point out that of these 6, there's 4 that are really just excuses that come, that are in your mind, in your head. It's either about certain beliefs that you're not good enough to learn a new language since you're already too old, or it's psychological and mental barriers to learning a language or speaking in front of others. Now, the other 2, I'm way too busy, or I will learn someday. I'll address that in reason number 5. So without getting into a debate about whether these excuses are well-founded or not, let's just say that if you introduce languages early for kids, then you have solved all of these issues. They're not too old to learn, right? And they not that they like failure, but they don't care about failure. They go out and try. They're little bulldozers. They talk to anybody all the time. And they are definitely comfortable speaking in front of others. There's nothing complex about what they say. They're not afraid of making mistakes, and they just go out and have fun. So they have everything they need to learn languages early. They don't have the mental blocks that adults have, and they definitely have the outgoing social behavior that many of us adults are, we have our reservations on. Here's my son with his friends in Canada. Here's another one with his friends in Japan and Taiwan. Well, I shouldn't say friends. It's just people that he met just at the park, at the public pool. They're just incredibly social, and they just go out and make friends, and just talk to anybody anytime. And if you put them in actual organized social context, like here at the Japanese school, where we send them every summer, they fit in right away if they have good language. They even join activities with their friends in social sports events. Here's also a picture from Taiwan where he's at a summer school, and these are all Taiwanese kids, and you see my son right in the middle and just integrated into the society very, very naturally. So reason number 4, brain benefits. Earlier we talked about the brain development period. Now we're going to talk about how learning different languages has benefits for your brain. If you compare the brain to muscles, learning a new language is like, I guess, training at the gym, and using it every day. Even like things like walking or jogging can improve your muscle mass very well. And learning a new language and using a new language every day actually can have tremendous benefits for your brain. Apparently, learning a new language is obviously difficult, but switching between languages is also quite difficult and a energy costly activity. So if you have 2 languages, A and B, if you want to switch from A to B, well, you need to do, it's a 2-step process. You have to first turn on B, which takes energy, and also you have to turn off A so that you don't have interference. So turning off A is also a costly activity. So if you are a perfect bilingual and you can switch around in the 2 languages or multiple languages, then you're very used to it and you have trained your brain very well for that activity. So using different languages has tremendous benefits to your brain, and I've summarized this, some of the literature that I've seen, into this little table here. So one one thing that gets talked about quite often is gray matter density. Gray matter is where all your neuronal cell bodies are. And apparently, comparing multilingual and monolingual kids, the multilingual kids would have a higher brain density. And the younger the additional languages are acquired, the denser the gray matter. I also see a lot of articles on resistance to mental decline. And by mental decline, we can talk about things like dementia or like Alzheimer's. And by resistance, we mean delay of onset and also delay of progression. Learning in general and complex thinking and creativity. Things like multitasking, things like scores in standardized tests. Apparently, multilinguals have it better than monolinguals. And finally, languages as part of communications will enhance your communication skills. That sounds straightforward enough. Multilinguals have it better. And I would like to add that learning a language is not just about learning the mechanics of a language, the grammar or the syntax or whatever, but it's also about learning up the culture of that language. So if you learn as a kid, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of this learning is through socializing, then you will inevitably absorb a lot of the culture and become a better communicator through that culture. So all this is quite, reasonable, I think. Now reason number 5, and that's opportunity costs. Now we're touching upon a little bit of financials or economics, I guess. And if we come back to the article that I mentioned earlier from the Optilingo blog, 2 of the reasons were I'm too busy or I will learn this one day. So wouldn't it be great that your kid won't grow up to say, I will learn a language someday, but rather thank you for having introduced a language to them already when they were young so that they do not have to learn it someday? So I cannot thank my parents enough for having introduced many languages to me when I was a child so that I didn't have to learn Japanese or Mandarin later in life. And that time that I saved, that I did not need to learn Japanese or Mandarin, I was able to apply that to my PhD in cellular molecular biology and to my MBA. So today I use the Japanese and English languages extensively in my work, but I didn't have to learn them because when I was a kid, I was sent to an American school, and also I've learned Japanese through my family growing up. So again, kids have a lot of time and they are very curious and to learn many things. So it's a great time to give them languages so that they can learn and absorb everything before they even realize the importance of languages and before they can rationalize about that. It's like they'll wake up one day and realize they can speak a few languages thanks to you. So those are the top 5 reasons for starting as early as possible in raising bilingual or multilingual kids. Peak brain development period. Learn multiple languages like a native speaker. Beliefs and psychological barriers. Brain benefits. Opportunity costs. I hope you liked today's videos. I've condensed a lot of information into a short little video. If you liked it, please give me a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and ring that little notification bell so you can follow our adventures in real time. Until next time, I bid you farewell.